Well, hello everybody and welcome back. This is David Bianco. Well, this is kind of a part two. I did a review back in November of 2022 when Analogue Productions released the UHQR version of Steely Dan's debut album, Can't Buy a Thrill. And it just is fabulous. There's no other way to put it. It beat anything I'd heard before, and I have a lot of versions of this as I'll go through. But I didn't have one particular audiophile version that I wanted to compare it to. Well, I have it now, and that's coming up next on a Vinyl Shootout here on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. The version I was lacking for the shootout in November of 2022 was in fact the one from Speaker's Corner. That's the audiophile label out of Germany that has done so many reissues, and they really do a great job. Now, their records, you can't really tell they're theirs because the covers and everything about them match the originals so closely. They don't even put a UPC code on the back of the album. So when you look at it, you're not really sure that you have a Speaker's Corner unless you bought the original and have, in fact, a sticker, which this one does not have because I bought this from someone here in the last week. It does have the original ABC logo on it, which, is looking exactly like the original looked. And aside from looking in the dead wax, you wouldn't know that it was Speaker's Corner. Now, ironically, this came in the mail while I was gone, and I took it out of the mail, realized that's what it was, and lo and behold, I see a video from Ron Beaudry, who has a great channel on comparing high-end audiophile records, and he was having a discussion about the Speaker's Corner version versus the UHQR, which has been reviewed by a lot of other people, including Michael 45 that he mentions. I reviewed it back again in November of 2022. And I thought, well, gee, that's interesting because I, too, have the UHQR version, which is a 45 RPM on 2 discs, whereas the Speaker's Corner is 33 RPM on 1 disc, like all the originals. I have here, I have the UK Probe label. I have the original ABC label for the first release. I have the very short-lived ABC Letterblocks version that came out as a second issue. I have a Canadian Gold vinyl version. I have the ABC Rainbow version. And I have the digital version that came out when the UHQR came out. Universal released this. They took Bernie Grunman's master that he provided to them in a high-res file and then cut it to vinyl. I still found that the UHQR was very much superior to that, but I was very interested in how the Speaker's Corner would sound. So in putting the Speaker's Corner LP on, one of the first things I realized was that it had very much I'm going to say a richer bottom end or a more forced bottom end, but the bottom end was really present and it was almost overtaking in the sense that there were some of the instruments on the higher end, some of the percussion instruments and things of that nature that basically got muffled a bit. And even some of the vocals, especially on Do It Again, the vocals almost were a little bit grating in the sense that I don't know if it's because this lower end was pushed to the point of being excessive and it affected the lower mid-range, but I know that the vocals weren't as smooth, especially on that song. It wasn't across all songs, but on that one it was kind of predominant. It reminded me a tad of my experience with the digital version. Now, it was actually worse, I'd say, if you want to use the term worse. It was more aggressive on the Speaker's Corner. And so in listening to that album and comparing it to the UHQR, boy, the UHQR just had a certain amount of openness to it. Everything was balanced. The voices were very smooth and not aggressive. The high end was very articulate and present in ways that I heard things I'd never heard before. And I also realized the bottom end was there, but it wasn't excessive. So for me, this experience was one whereby I would say, if you like that lower end kind of little boomier kind of sound, the Speaker's Corner definitely brings that to the table. For my taste, a bit to the excess, actually. And I would tell you that, the OGs of this, when you go try and buy them, they're $50, $60, $70, $80. And of course, this isn't helped by the fact that really the best pressing out there is $150. So I'm going to say kind of exactly what I said back in November. If this is one of your favorite albums and you really love it as much as I do, obviously, then the UHQR is the go-to. It is far superior. It's just an openness and presence and articulation of sound, I'll call it, that I have not heard on this album on any version whatsoever. And the Speaker's Corner didn't change my mind on that one bit. One thing I will say is that I did again listen to the digital version, the $30 Universal, and it did still have, it's still like a dB and a half louder, and it's a little more aggressive than the UHQR. But it for me is something that I would say, gee, if this is just an album I like and I don't really love, I don't have any originals or it would be too expensive to buy them, it's a perfectly good version to have in your collection. It's just for me that, in fact, I believe that the UHQR really hits the sweet spot. It gets all of the right sound out of the tape. It presents it in a way that's much more balanced, much more open, a very elaborate sound stage that you don't get on any other version. And the voices are very well tamed in the sense that they're not aggressive, they're smooth, and they flow with the music. Whereas some of these other versions have a little bit going on with the sound where the vocals on certain tracks don't quite sound as smooth. And it really kind of takes away from enjoying the track. So my bottom line is the Speaker's Corner for me was a little bit too aggressive. And again, on At Least Do It Again for sure, some of the vocals really grated a bit to me. And again, once you hear the UHQR, it's like butter. Everything else, it's so smooth. All the others, you can just pretty much not even need them, to be honest with you. It's also a 45 RPM, as I mentioned, so you got to flip it more often. Of course, you have that. But the sound is just far and above superior. Now, is it worth $150? That's a whole different discussion. That's a personal decision. It's a lot to pay. It's 5 times more expensive than the digital. Does it sound 5 times better? Well, for an album that I really love and know so well, for me, yeah, it was worth it. Definitely was. And I would say that, the OGs sound good, but if you're getting up into that $100 price range to find a really clean OG, you might consider the UHQR to really get the cream of the crop. And again, the vinyl obviously is quieter, and it's just a better presentation. It's money well spent if that's an album that you really care for. So that's my secondary shootout that I've done on this record. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed, please press on the bell down there. The top one gets you the all option, and a thumbs up or like is appreciated, as well as comments. I'd appreciate any input you have, any questions you have. I try to get back to almost everybody, and I enjoy your participation. So for now, as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.